Hey everybody, Hokius here. And today I just wanted to do kind of a retrospective of my time with Bloodborne. So this is kind of a review, but I don't want to give it that qualification necessarily because obviously I didn't do everything there was to do in the game. So there's a lot I may have missed, and but I wanted to talk about my experience playing the game. So I'm gonna do it, and you're gonna watch it because you're here watching it now. Right. Okay, so I never really had any intention of playing Bloodborne, beyond the fact that it was scary, and I hate being scared. I knew it was by the same team who had made and a spiritual successor to the Dark Souls games. I consider myself moderately talented at video games, but the way the difficulty of these games has always been so hyped and convinced me that I'd never be good enough to beat them. So why bother? But then it was free as part of the PlayStation Plus membership a few months ago, and I had decided I wanted to start doing some Twitch streaming. And I wasn't sure how hard or easy it would be to actually be entertaining while playing a video game for several hours. So I thought, here, I could play this game. It's popular. It's probably going to get some renewed popularity coming out. And, if I'm not otherwise entertaining, I will probably spend a good portion of this game screaming like a small child. And that will be entertaining. I wasn't really concerned with being able to beat it. I just wanted to scare myself into an audience, which, that seems to have worked. Kind of. So thanks again to everyone who watched the streams. Y'all are terrific. It turns out that the game isn't impossibly difficult, though. Yeah, it is hard, and it will punish you if you're not careful or you can't learn quickly enough, but it isn't impossible. It's never impossible. The biggest key to success in Bloodborne is attention to detail. You're almost never going to beat a boss in your first time through. You might not even beat the regular enemies the first time you encounter them. But if you can learn their attack patterns, you can learn to defeat them. And it isn't even that hard to do. I'm notorious, at least in my own mind, for not being able to track very many variables in a given situation before I just get overwhelmed. That's one of the reasons my Final Fantasy Tactics playthrough ended so early. There was the whole thing with couldn't beat the fight no matter how many times I tried, but I just felt like I was constantly overwhelmed. There was just too many things to track, and I couldn't do it. But the enemies in Bloodborne were never introduced too quickly, and they didn't ever have so many possible attacks that I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to be learning. I couldn't keep in mind what I needed to avoid and how I needed to avoid it. It was really well balanced in that way that it was hard, but it was not impossible. And if it's not impossible for me to keep up with it, it's not impossible for you. You can do it. And if you're still having trouble with the game, after you learn that, then there's other mechanics that they've put in the game that can help you with that too. First of all, it is an RPG. Now, RPG, which stands for role-playing game, should mean, the definition of that should be you inhabit a role and you are this character and you proceed through the game as that character and learn and grow and try to be that character. That's the tabletop games is where this all started. But mostly what it's ended up meaning for video games, especially recently, it does sometimes mean that, but mostly what you're almost guaranteed to see if you see RPG is that there's a leveling system. That's the biggest thing. There's a leveling system, there's stats, and you can level up and acquire stats. And Bloodborne is no different in that regard. So if you're having trouble with a boss, you can just go farm up some experience and you'll be able eventually to just completely overpower it by just having way too much experience in the game. Plus, doing that helps you learn the mechanics of the game, which helps you get better at it. The game also gives you a couple of bells. The multiplayer system. So it gives you, first of all, it gives you the beckoning bell, which you can use to summon other players into your game, or you can summon NPCs. You can summon NPCs, strangers, or friends. Friends, using the password system, you can make sure you get the person you want into your game, which is pretty useful, obviously, for trying to help you defeat enemies. You do have to be a little bit careful with those, because the game, when you summon other people, it actually makes the bosses harder too. So if you it's complicated, but basically if you summon someone too underleveled for what you're trying to do, it's actually going to make the boss fight harder. It's supposed to have like a level melding system, kind of, where it boosts them up to your level or lowers them down to your level. But my experience was that the weapon levels stayed the same no matter what. So if you summon someone who is not as far in the game as you are, their weapon levels may be lower than yours. So even though it kind of boosts their character up experience-wise, it doesn't boost that weapon up, and so they're not doing as much damage as they might otherwise be doing. And the other thing you can get is you get the beckoning bell through the course of playing the game, but you can purchase a resonant bell from some of the messengers, and you can use that to join other people's games, and that's how they join your game. And that is actually really cool, because the way it works is actually really powerful for helping you play this game. It's almost, I would say it's more powerful for helping you play this game than the beckoning bell, even if it's more indirect. So the game has a combination of currency and experience points called Blood Echoes. And like the Souls games before, when you die, you drop all of your currency, your Blood Echoes, every time. And if you can get back to them without dying again, you can pick them back up. But if you die a second time, they're gone forever. So there is some permanent loss going on there. However, if you use your small resonant bell to go into someone else's game, when you die, instead of losing your blood echoes, you're just transported back to your game world with your blood echoes intact to the state that your world was in before. So if you start ringing your small resonant bell next to a lantern, which is like a safe area, and you can go back to the Hunter's Dream and spend your blood echoes on leveling up or on items, then you'll go right back there and you'll still have your blood echoes, which is really nice. And of course, because you can't lose your blood echoes, this is really the safest way to go about learning the boss mechanics. So if you're worried about the upcoming boss, you can just ring your small beckoning bell, or your small resonant bell, and get summoned into someone else's world and learn about all the enemies on your way to the boss, and then learn about that boss's mechanics without risking your own blood echoes. So that's really powerful, and like everything else in Bloodborne, it doesn't exactly spell that out. It's something you just kind of have to learn through trial and error, or from talking to other people who've played the game, who will almost certainly tell you all about this, because it's really a good aspect of the game, and it's a lot of fun. And it's good in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's my biggest recommendation if you're having trouble with the game, is to use that small resonant bell. And while you can do that, and you should do that if you're having trouble, for my money, the gameplay was among the best I've ever encountered, even without them. Like I said, I was never overwhelmed by the mechanics. If you are overwhelmed by the mechanics, I'm not telling you that you just got to get good, because there is, let's be honest, there is a segment of the population that would say, well, just get good. No, use the mechanics that the game gives you. That's why the game gives them to you. But if you don't need to use them, and this, I like to always try an area and a boss on my own first, just to see, can I do it? Because, the first time I run into the boss, well, they'll kick my butt, and I go, a lot of times I go, well, this is it. This is the brick wall, and I'm gonna quit now and try to play another game. But I didn't, because the game, if you're paying attention, you're going to open enough shortcuts back to the boss that it's not going to be this huge slog back through all the enemies that you had just killed. You can go around them. And And so it was not as bad as it sounds when people describe the game and they're like, oh, all the enemies respawn when you die. Well, yeah, but there's shortcuts and you can go around them. And so you can go right back there, and the boss fights are not like super long. I think some of the longest ones I had were, I think maybe there was one that was like 10 minutes. Most of them were more around 5 minutes. So it's kind of like that mobile game thing. Just one more try, just one more try, just one more try. It won't take that long, just one more try. And then the game also gives you encouragement as you're going, I feel, as you go up to the boss and you're like, oh, I understand what this move is and how to deal with it now. I can get around it. And then you can learn bit by bit, piece by piece, how to do the fight. And then the next thing you know, you killed the boss, and then they're dead, and you feel amazing because you didn't give up, and the sense of accomplishment, it's unlike anything I've really experienced, despite my long gaming career. And the feedback loop of the game, that's basically what this game is slog your way to a difficult boss, get your butt kicked, get back up, go after him again, and kill him and or her or it, and you'll feel really, really like you've accomplished something, which is not necessarily something you see in a lot of other games which don't have this same level of difficulty, which is why this difficulty of this game exists. And I begin to understand, people used to say, well, you can't make the Soulsborne games easier. You can't add an easy difficulty. That would ruin the entire point of the game. And a lot of those people say that to be like, you know, kind of jerks, like, you just got to get good. But they're right, even though they're wrong. Like, it's not about like, I'm an elite player and so I'm better than you and they can't possibly add a difficulty. The difficulty of the game is why the game is fun. So they're right, even though they're wrong. That you can't really add an easy difficulty to Bloodborne. There's not any point to playing Bloodborne, at least for me, on an easy difficulty. That's what I'm saying. The gameplay loop in Bloodborne, for me at least, had to be amazing. Many games, they boost that emotion, the feeling, the whatever, by giving you massive story moments around boss kills. For example, when you finish Mass Effect, you're probably not going to be excited about the amazing boss battle you just had. Now, there will be some cool set pieces, but the actual fights are usually pretty dull, pretty bland, pretty boring. But the story moments that it gives you when that happens are where you're gonna get your rush of endorphins, your awesome feelings. Bloodborne story, though, is well, it's for me, it wasn't there. There was no story in my playthrough. It is at best difficult to find. For my playthrough, I created a character. They receive some sort of blood transfusion, and you wake up in a nightmare land, and everything wants to kill you. And from that point on, my experience with the game was keep moving forward, keep finding bosses, keep killing bosses, because this is a video game, and that's what you do, right? That's how you play the video games. Famously lampooned. Well, not lampooned. What's the word? Highlighted, I guess, by BioShock. Great game, by the way. But that's not what we're talking about today. So I thought after I played the game, well, I'll get to that in a second. After I played the game, I went on YouTube and I found some videos from other people who've spent a lot more time with the game than I have, just trying to learn about the story. And I didn't walk away with the feeling that I knew anything more about the story. Who is my character? What do they want? What do any of the current characters want? What are they doing to achieve those goals? It's just a bunch of screaming monsters trying to kill you because you're there. as far as I could tell. And the videos did highlight the amazing lore that exists in this series. Oh my gosh, there is so much lore, and it's not actually all that hard to find, though I didn't spend a lot of time with it. Basically, you just have to be willing to look at the item descriptions and put some pieces together, and find more items than I found. And there's so much lore to this game. Like, there's some major players that there's a reason Yharnam is the way that it is, and there was some people that were trying to accomplish some things, and they don't appear to be really making much of an effort to accomplish them anymore, but they were. And it's really kind of cool to kind of understand how did this place come to exist. So there's something there for you. There's just not, as far as I can tell. And again, it's at this point I guess I should be clear that while I certainly didn't intentionally avoid finding story or lore, I guess I didn't spend as much effort looking for it as I could have. So your experience may be entirely different. Maybe there's a story there and I just can't find it. If so, please let me know in the comments, because I want to know what the story of this game is. I had so much fun with this game, and I would like to love it even more. But I know I missed some things. I've since I finished it, I found out there's at least a couple of bosses that I never even ran into, much less fought or killed. And I thought I did try to find all the bosses and kill them, but I guess I missed some of them. And I guess it is possible, like I said, that the game does have an expansive story, and because Bloodborne doesn't hold your hand in any sense, I never saw it, I never found it. But my experience, and that's all I'm really talking about here, which is one of the reasons I don't necessarily want to call this a review, is because this is just my experience, which was 3 hours, encountered over 3 hours a week for a few weeks. Is that there was no story. I couldn't find it, and it wasn't there, and I missed it. I wanted that story to drive home even more. Which is not to say that the game necessarily suffered for its lack, because the game is really good, you guys. It's so good. I always want more. Just give me more. I gotta find more. If you watched my Bloodborne highlights video, which should be right about here-ish somewhere. Yeah. You can, at the very end, you can see me reacting to killing the Orphan of Cause. He's the final boss fight in the Old Hunters DLC, which is the only DLC I know of that came out for the game. And fighting him, he's the most, by far the most difficult fight in the game. After I fought him, I went and fought the last two bosses that I knew of in the game, and they were a cakewalk. I didn't even have to try after fighting the Orphan of Cause, because he was so hard that I just gotten so I don't want to say I was so good, but I was so used to what I was trying to accomplish, I guess. The muscle memory was there. So he's so hard, you guys. And you watch that video, I'm just like, I'm just sitting there going, woo, and making sounds, and I literally couldn't think straight. I was shaking with adrenaline because that fight was just so intense, and that's the highest point of the game. But the rest of the game is almost that good too. Like it's you fight the cleric beast is the first boss for a lot of people, and he's hard. And then you fight Father Gascoigne, and he's hard. And when you kill them, you just feel so good. I love so many video games, but I don't think I've ever played one that made me feel that overwhelmed when I succeeded. And it's really good. The only other thing I found disappointing beyond the lack of my perceived lack of story was the sound design. It's kind of a weird thing to say, because the atmospheric sounds were great, the character sounds were great, the monster sounds were great, the music was great, but the design problem comes in that at least if you don't mess with any of the settings, the music, which seems to only really play during boss fights, was pretty frequently drowned out by the boss fight itself. The bosses are pretty much constantly screaming, whether it's in rage or pain, and there's your character's grunting, and there's attacks and visceral attack sound markers so that you know what to do, and there's just so much sound going on that you can't really hear the music. I've listened to the soundtrack, at least most of it, on YouTube since I finished the game, at the recommendation of the gentleman who did co-op with me for so many of my streams. Thanks again, Weirdy Beardy. And the music really is fantastic, and it sets the tone. It gives you a sense not just of how terrifying this game is, but how terrifying this particular boss is, and how they're terrifying. And it's the music suits them so well. It's just a dadgum shame I couldn't hear it in the game. So if you haven't played the game, if you're getting ready to play the game, I definitely recommend go in the settings, see if you can figure out how to adjust it so that when the music plays, you can hear it, because it's so good. And I really feel it would have added a lot more to my playthrough if I could have heard it, given me an even better sense of the atmosphere. Speaking of atmosphere, though, even with this game being a PS4 launch title, which means it's several years old now, it was made before the PS4 Pro, before the push for 4K, and you know, games usually at the beginning of a console generation, they don't even know how to use the hardware that they've got right there in front of them to the highest levels. Even with all of that, I can tell you that the graphic design team for Bloodborne did a phenomenal job, both with the monsters, which are terrifying and detailed and gory and gross, and they just got so much going for them, and with the settings, which are creepy and gorgeous at the same time. There's terrific gothic architecture. There's a lot of the moon and the sky change colors and do different things at various points in the game depending on what how you've changed. I mean, there's a story somewhere in someone's mind, because the world is changing around you as you're interacting with it. It's never clear to me how or why it's changing, just that it is. And I'm not the kind of person who spends a lot of time on visual details. I'm the kind of guy who can go back even now. Just like a couple of years ago, I went back and played Final Fantasy 1 for the first time. This is not a graphical powerhouse of a game. Didn't bother me at all. I'm here for give me some good gameplay, give me some great story or characters, or both preferably, and some good music, and I don't really care what you look like. But this game was so pretty that I was frequently stopping and going, gotta screenshot that, gotta screenshot that, gotta screenshot that. And so for me to say that, I just want to clarify that that's a pretty big deal. That's not something I usually do. It's not something I highlight a lot. It is a gorgeous game, and definitely will benefit from taking the time to smell the roses or kill the flowers, as the case may be. That's a little inside joke from my first stream and my first highlight video. Yeah. Anyway, overall, I'm glad that I played this game. It was an amazing experience because of the gameplay, and because, I mean, I have to admit, a lot of the fun I had in this game was because of the people in my stream too. I don't know if it would have been as fun without them, but they were there, so it was fun. So, you know, if you're thinking about getting into streaming, maybe you stream some Bloodborne. There's a really good, strong fan base for this game still out there, and you can meet a lot of people, and have a good time. Again, that one sticking point for me was I wanted there to be something that I could see in the story, and maybe that's my fault. But that's what there was. And even with that, like I said, the defeating the bosses, oh my gosh, the feeling of defeating the bosses was so good. This game isn't for everyone. If you want something relaxing to play after a hard day of work, it might not be for you. If you have an adverse reaction to blood or body horror or general horror or jump scares, there's not a lot of jump scares considering that this is a horror game, but there are a few. Maybe you don't want to play Bloodborne. It might not be the game for you. But if you want a game with exceptionally high quality gameplay, that makes you work for every achievement, but rewards you proportionally for your successes, then I can't think of a game I'd recommend more highly. That's really all I have to say. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a beautiful day, and may all your paths be paved with hexagonal stones. Here's a quick shout out to all of my patrons. For as little as $1 a month, you too can have your name listed here. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, please do hit the like and subscribe buttons to help me reach more people.